Senteu Nangoro Karama, a Form 6 student again from the same school, also doing the same combination AGE. My co-host is Mr. Charles Kaloli from this other side. The two of us will be leading this discussion where these young brains will be discussing a topic which is called self-employment in Tanzania.
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. I also take the gratitude to welcome the panelists in our discussion. And the issue is self-employment a possibility or it's a tragedy in Tanzania? Without wasting time, I think I give you back the mic, Mr. Lincoln, to kickstart our discussion.
Thank you, my co-host, Mr. Charles Kaloli. And now let's begin our discussion. Like we said, the topic is self-employment in Tanzania. Is it a possible thing? And for a start, we would like to know from the what's your understanding of the term employment? Who can chip in?
It means a situation in which a person is willing, able, and available to work at a certain firm, any area possible, at an ongoing wage rate. That's all.
So let's hear more from other panelists about the term employment before we continue.
Employment, this is best referred as the situation in which a person who is willing to work for a particular firm, government, or any private and public sector, that they are paid according to the agreed time between the employer as agreed.
That's fine. From you?
On my personal opinions, I can say is a situation, a person who has qualified to work in a certain position in a firm or a government is given the chance to do so under specific terms and conditions from both the individual and the ones who have employed the person.
All right, that's right. I think Senteu Nkalama, your understanding of the term employment before you continue, please.
Employment is simply the situation whereby a person with the ability and the willingness to work gets a job at the ongoing wage rate given in accordance with the terms and conditions at the beginning of the jobs.
Good. Now I think we have the understanding of the term employment, and Mr. Chazia, who happens to be the teacher for economics for these students, will say whether this is right or it's not right. In my own understanding, I feel it's right. Employment is when you are willing to work and you are doing the right job, and you are, at the end of the day you get paid for what you have worked for. Maybe it could be for 30 days, depending on the agreement. It could be for 1 day, it could be for a week, right?
It's about you being able to work, and you must also have the willingness
to work. All right. Thank you. Now that's with that said, I want to know at this juncture, who employs in Tanzania? Who is this person who employs in Tanzania before you go to self-employment? Who are the employers in Tanzania? Who wants to chip in? Who? Where? Yes.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this chance to speak. In Tanzania, I believe that the employers can be categorized into two groups. The first one is the government or the government. The government employs people in different posts in the government. For example, the managers of BOT works in the government. The ministers work in the government. The doctors for the government officers of the government hospitals are hired by the government. So that is one sector in which employment can occur. And in the other sector, I believe that the employment can be issued by individual sectors. Speaking of individual sectors, private sectors, we include the churches. Example, we can see that the Roman Catholics have employed a lot of people in schools like St. Francis, in hospitals and other private sectors. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, William Justus Were, for sharing with us your understanding of who employs in Tanzania. Do you share the same views, Mr. Charles?
Basically, we have two employers, the government and the private sector. That's all. Yes.
Thank you. Now I would like to link what we are discussing now with what is actually rolling on the ground in Tanzania. We have the education system that has been in place since we got independence, and we Tanzanians have got educated through the same system. And we have heard many times people saying, leaders of the government, of the party, saying that people, the youths, should not waste time looking for employment. They should, in fact, employ themselves. They should resort to self-employment. I want to understand, is there a good linkage between education system in Tanzania and employment? Because I have seen many people who have graduated higher levels of education, say master's degree, PhD. These are the people who will just walk about looking for employment. And then on the other hand, you have these are people who did not continue with further education. Somebody ended at grade 7, for example. And these people have the guts to start business, develop business, nurture business, make it grow and become big. And then they are the people who employ these people who are educated. We have examples, I don't want to mention names here in Tanzania, but we have many people who have money and they don't have much education, and they're the ones who have gone about to employ these big people in terms of education. Is there any gap between education system that we have in Tanzania and the employment system that we have, talking about self-employment?
I think the employment system and the education system, I believe there is a gap. As in education system, it is believed that you have to complete from since nursery all the way to college in order for you to be able to get employed, and that's why the problem comes in. It is believed that most of the youth that are in school nowadays are usually filled with this education that after school you're supposed to get employed. The concept of self-employment is only taught theoretical. Nobody believes in it. It was only believed that the only way to be assured to get a job and improve your living standard is only by getting employed. And I think the government should change the education system, as it does not support the youth. It only puts them inside a box. It covers their way of thinking outside the box. It does not let them to get to know or start a business, because as a youth it's very impossible to start a business out of nowhere without having any source of income from anywhere. So a lot of people, mostly the youths that usually finish from the universities, depend on getting employed by an employer. But for the ones who usually end up at grade 7, they don't go the way to the professional level of education. Some of them succeed in getting a business and some of them don't, in which whereby there it is believed that due to that reason that when you don't finish grade 7 or when you end at grade 7, it's not 100% guaranteed that you're going to start a business and succeed. Some people try and fail, but the same can be said to the ones who finish the level of education at universities. I think it's a matter of luck, but it's only believed that the only way to be sure to make a living is through finishing all the way to the professional level of education, which is the university.
Oh, thank you. I think that's well said. I want this idea to be shared amongst all of us here, especially you, the panelists. Now, Mary David Msabi, what's your take on the same?
Thank you. In my opinion, is that in life, always life has given us, it's only a matter of choices. And to the people who go to school from kindergarten to university, their only choice was it's not either, you just get employed. So self-employment to them was not a choice. and nobody was taught in school to self-employ themselves. Since childhood, we're given list of careers which we have to choose, and the careers range from engineers, pilots to doctors, nurses. That's all we get. We never got exposure on what self-employment is. What can we do beyond being doctors, beyond being engineers, beyond being pilots? So we never got to learn, we never got to be taught how to live a life outside the careers which we were exposed to since childhood. So this has become a problem, since if we don't see what other people are outside of what we are taught today, how can we become what we are expected of later? So the education system in Tanzania does not prepare us youths to be self-reliant, self-employed, to create jobs and not to seek jobs. So I think that's the problem. That's why the people who are educated from kindergarten to university fail to advance in their lives through their business, in their careers, and they're being picked by the class 7 leavers because of that, because they have experience. Their life choices were to seek what their environment demands of them. But us, our choices were given by the system which we live in. Thank you.
Wow, that's interesting. Very interesting. Now, on the same question, I would like to know, Were, is it that the education system that we have in Tanzania creates cowards, people who are afraid of making attempts in life? Because we see, like you all agree, the first two panels have discussed here, and I've said very categorically that the people who are not much educated are the ones who are actually successful in business, in self-employment. And those who have gone to the higher levels of professional training and educational training will always start business, and before you know it, the business collapse. So what happens that culminates into this kind of an affair that business starts by the educated, and then business collapses within a short period of time, and then somebody who is not much educated starts business, and business thrives? Where?
Thank you, sir. I have a quite different opinion, and I'm very willing to explain it because I believe this table is about discussion. You know, when you say that people who are educated start businesses and they cripple, I think even there are some people who have been educated and they have started businesses and they have prospered. For example, taking an example of Mohamed Dewji, the CEO of the Metal Group in Tanzania, which is technically the biggest group in Tanzania. He is very educated and he has succeeded. But likewise, there are people who have not been educated and they have made some very big groups. That means the education system of Tanzania have nothing to do with the education systems offered in Tanzania have nothing to do with the failure of the people. But what makes people to be successful or not is their courage. When you talk about the functions of self-enterprise, one of them is risk-bearing. And when you talk about risk-bearing, we are discussing about either the risk to incur great loss or the risk to incur supernormal profits. Many people in Tanzania expect to get supernormal profits, but when they get a loss, they don't have the courage to start again. And many businesses in Africa and even in the world, we can see many rich people, there are times which they almost got bankrupt, but eventually they rised. Talking about Mark Zuckerberg was once among the top 10 richest people, but now his net worth have crippled. But he's back there, he's still there because of his courage. So I believe that the education system is good, but many people fail because of wanting to have a sure means of getting money. That I wake up, I sleep, I follow the same routine, and at the end of the month I have 500,000. They don't want I can invest 100 million and I can get a loss, but I can also get a big profit. They don't want to stress themselves, and their lack of wanting to stress themselves makes them be locked in the system, which makes them to not do the things to the fullest potential. But if everybody in the country had the willingness and the power to bear risks, then everybody could have been successful. So it's not about the education system, but it's about the personal efforts. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. It's not about the education system, it's about the personal prowess that one is endowed with, the courage to do things, the courage to make things happen. Senteo, you have not spoken for quite some time. What's your take on the same?
I think that there are two things that we need to consider when it comes to self-employment. Is that firstly, the education system confines people to a specific way of life, but then again there's also the issue of courage, as my colleague said. Now when we're talking of the paradigms, is that most people are taught that this is how things are supposed to go. You'll study, you'll finish, you'll get a good job. But most people don't actually take into consideration, what if I'm the one that makes the jobs, right? So now let's say like most people want to finish, they become doctors, engineers, or pilots because we have been told for so long that these are the people who are most successful. These are the people who are most respected in the society, and it's not wrong, it's true. But there are those who provide the employment to these people. And now we come to courage. Most people are scared of taking risks because what if they get lost? What if they incur the losses? Then they won't try again. But they don't know that the great profits that they can make out of this will greatly outweigh the losses that they have made within their endeavors. And I think that is something that needs to be taught in the education system. So a little changes in the education system could really help the situation.
Thank you so much, my panelists, Senteo Nkalama, William Justice Uwere, Geoffrey Lawrence, and Mary David Msabi. Now I hand the microphone to my co-host, Mr. Charles Kaloli. Mr. Charles, please.
Thank you once again, Mr. Lincoln. I'm actually captivated looking at the contribution is made by the panelists. It's like they are kind of well versed, and only that everybody might blame the education system. Someone who has also talked about the courage, but nobody has talked about exposure. You know, the education system must always expose its learners. You know, for someone to be self-employed, you need to have the exposure. You need to have the entrepreneurship skills. Do you really have them? If someone completes education and then he is not exposed to entrepreneurship skills, it means that there is a gap. But again, we have issues like family background. When you look at the top 10 rich people in Tanzania, their richness or their riches or their successes in the business is not from the blue. Someone mentioned Muhammad Dewji. Have you tried to search about his family background? You see, I've always heard people talking about Bakresa, that he was a shoeshiner somewhere, but I don't think whether these are founded stories. Probably their reason is why he is rich. Probably connected to his family. Maybe, I'm not sure, I'm just gambling in my statements, but when I look at these most successful entrepreneurs, most of them have a link to their family backgrounds. Otherwise, I'm really happy with the expressions from the panelists, and I think they have exhausted the motion.